On Point, hosted by Peter Van Aardrijk. Conversations with interesting and informative experts on technology, branding, culture, social media marketing, and other great topics.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Peter Van Aardrijk, your host for On Point, brought to you by our good friends at Wells Media, which includes Carrier Management, Insurance Journal, and other fine publications. Our guest today is Spencer Mahoney, who's Chief Growth Officer for CCIG, an independent broker based in the Denver area. For those who can safely surf, the URL is thinkccig.com. Welcome, Spencer.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So definitely want to talk about the firm and your acquisitions and your growth, and but also your take on the channel, on the independent agent channel, where it's headed, and the importance of, in your mind, and I'm a believer too, of remaining independent as much as possible in a pretty incredible world we're living in right now. So again, welcome to the show. And let me first ask you, where are you from originally? Tell me your origin story.
Yeah, I'm a Colorado native, so grew up here in Greenwood Village, Colorado. The history of the company goes back to my father started at Brooke Mahoney in 1985. He worked at large brokerages for most of his career and felt the need to kind of better serve the local Denver community. He just moved here from Iowa with my mom and started at just a small commercial operation, a little bit of personal lines, but mainly small commercial business, and really just grew it through the years. My brother and I, Andrew Mahoney, we were both interested in the business. I mean, to be frank, we were working in the business, when we were very, very little. So no daycare when we were little, just growing up on the floors of CCIG. Some of the employees that we still have today were actually quasi babysitters for us, which is a funny story. But we showed interest right out of college, but Brooke was smart enough to say, go get your teeth kicked in somewhere else, learn the industry, and come back. So I did a stint. We both did stints on the underwriting side with the Hartford right out of college. And then I went to Boston and worked for Gallagher as a producer over there, mainly in the life science world. So producing kind of pre-revenue companies through IPO. My brother did something similar, more on the D&O side at RT Specialty in Chicago. And we both brought our expertise back to Denver and kind of started in sales from the bottom and kind of worked our way up. And once we were kind of taking over the sales team in our own capacities, we then kind of moved into management of the firm. Brooke is still our CEO and involved in some of the strategic decisions, but the day-to-day last, call it 5-6 years, has been on Andrew and I. So we're proud of the family business and the fact that we've been able to continue it through the second generation and into the future, and still proud, obviously, to be fully independent and family owned.
That's great. It's such a good business, I mean, if you can immerse yourself in it and learn it, it's the gift that keeps on giving,
I will say I probably was the only kid in college that showed an interest telling people that I was going to be in insurance. Most people, gave me that look like, why would you choose that industry? It's boring. And I was like, well, I think from what you just said, it kind of gives you access to work on any company under the sun. So, for me, healthcare and life science, for others, construction or real estate, you get to work with them all. So it's the greatest industry in the world, and only people in insurance know that.
Yeah. It's so interesting how many sons and daughters of principals are in the business, very much family. But there's always, those cliches, and not everybody wants to work with dad or mom, but seems to be working for you guys. Was that idea of getting your teeth kicked in somewhere else, looking back, was that a good move on your part to go somewhere else?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I didn't know anything really about the insurance world outside of what we, had growing up. And more importantly, getting the underwriting experience, understanding how underwriters and carriers look at risk, property valuation, how they're, going about finding rate. I think that was key to kind of understanding our business and being able to explain that down the road to the client. And then, you know, when you're a producer, there's almost two avenues of learning that you have to fall into. It's learning the insurance world and being able to explain that to your client, but sales in its own right is a learning experience. So, the blocking and tackling of calling and cold calling and following up and the constant rejection of sales, that takes a while in order to get that to kind of, stretch that muscle a little bit. So getting both of those facets under our belt and then moving back to Denver and being able to say, great, I know where my strong suit is. I know how to sell. I know how to talk to clients. That was huge. And I think more importantly, just, we were Mahoney's and we were coming back to take over a family business. Being able to do that somewhere else under someone else's supervision, I think was key, so that we weren't maybe soiling the Mahoney name into some of the people that we were eventually going to be leading.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it. Right. And also, do you feel, not to get too existential, but the sons of the founder, the proud founder, the CEO, the guy who built the firm from 1985 on, it's like you didn't want the feeling, he may not have wanted to feel this way, nor you, that it's sort of like a given, a handed down thing, like the crown prince walks in and the staff. I mean, you guys are a pretty sizable firm with, I think, 30 million in revenue projected for this year. So you want the staff to believe in you as much as your dad, maybe, right? Was that part of it? Psychology almost.
Yeah, I mean, in a good way, there's a little bit of a target on your back. You're about to go up against some of these salespeople that have been at CCIG for a while, or service people that have served our clients and community for a long time. So they want us to kind of prove it to them that we were able to do it. So there's no better way than to start at the bottom. Your book is zero, and you have to grow it up to lead that sales team yourself. There's no better way to do it than to go through the sales process. So earn people's respect by kind of leading, being that servant leader and being able to do it yourself, I think is the best way to do it. So Brooke knew that, and he did it obviously himself at other agencies, and then built it from scratch. So that's the only proving ground that we feel is the best rite of passage in order to lead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's talk more about the firm. What talk a little bit about what, you mentioned the big focus from the start on commercial lines, but what's your mission? What's your niche? Who's the target customer? What needs do they have? And what is your, kind of vision for a better way of managing risk and handling insurance for those folks?
Yeah. So, just a little background on us. Where you mentioned we're 30 million in revenue, about to breach that this summer. We're call it just over 100 employees. We have 3 business segments that we focus in. So there's the P&C property casualty team, commercial business insurance. That's probably 60% of our staff. And then we have employee benefits version as well, or team as well. I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, we made a strategic acquisition down in Austin, Texas, with the Karen team. That was all employee benefits focused. So we have now representation on the EB side in Austin, Texas, and also in Denver. And then we also have a pretty deep bench in the private client group space as well. So multiple producers there that are really focused in that high net worth range. So larger assets, multiple homes, all the toys that go along with it, and have really cut out a nice niche. And I wouldn't just say even Colorado, mainly the West, in terms of high net worth personal lines insurance.
Okay.
Our customers vary, but we love that middle market space. Call it 10 million in revenue up to even 500 million in revenue. Local kind of Southwest focused companies that really value that kind of white glove treatment that we can give them. We compete with all of the mega brokers in the space, the private equity and publicly traded brokerages. We also compete. We have a select team that focuses on that kind of small commercial space as well. So we are a true middle market, mid-sized business located in Denver, but serving that middle market business sector is really where we like to play.
So you used to not to be condescending, but a white glove treatment. Can you talk a little bit about what that's? People say that all the time. What does it mean for you guys?
Yeah, so we feel that in the insurance world, we're not out there chasing revenue or the next big acquisition. We're in the business of retaining clients and keeping them happy. I'll take a page out of our private client group team. I think what makes them so successful is that they're not just taking a product off the shelf, call it an online quoted, program that you would see on TV, basic insurance, here it is. Potentially there's a lot of sub limits or loopholes in those policies to where they're not covering the client, to the max or very broadly. We like to dive into the details and say it tends to take more time and there is a little bit more hand holding there, but I think certain customers want that. They're not just trying to buy the brand of the largest broker because it's the largest broker. They're trying to say, hey, like, take care of my employees, my board of directors, my vision at the company, correctly. And I think a lot of that sometimes goes to the wayside in our business. So the independent model for us is that high touch, making sure the client's happy, retaining that. There's a heavy emphasis on retention. So it's not just giving you an insurance product and walking away. It's touch points throughout the year to make sure that you're happy, making sure your employees are happy, bringing solutions forward to your team. Hey, maybe you're not going to buy this type of insurance today, but here's what we see for you in the future. It's kind of being that strategic advisor. I think that's really where we like to, dig in on the EB side, the PCG side, and certainly the P&C side.
Okay. So what you mentioned the acquisition, what do you see ahead for the M&A space? Are you guys looking at more, or are you satisfied with the organic growth? What's happening? Because I know there's just been it's been a crazy number of years. You could even say decades. Although with private equity pulling back a little bit, interest rate drama, presidential elections, tariffs, et cetera. It's always a little bit changing, but you get the feeling that the good firms are either doing the buying or being acquired themselves. There's been some big deals this year as well announced. But what's your take? And talk about the organic growth piece. It's something that we do a lot of work with Reagan Consulting and best practices and the Big I and InsureBank, which funds acquisitions. They're always talking about the value of organic growth. Maybe buying a book, maybe bringing in some producers, as opposed to acquiring another firm to grow, or instead, in addition to, so the value of organic growth. Anyway, let me pause because I'm throwing a lot of concepts at you, and you guys probably have a strategy that we'd love to hear about.
Yeah, so there's been obviously a wave of acquisitions in the insurance space. I mean, mainly driven in that private equity and large national firms expanding their footprint, gathering more market share. The independent world, our strategy first is to take care of the client, but I'd be lying to say if we're not growing in strategic areas and adding different technologies or even strategic producers who are very niche focused, then we're falling behind as well. So we've always had a strategy to grow organically first, but where it makes sense, we'll strategically add in these acquisitions. So I'll talk about the last two. With Karen, I mentioned that was a strategic opportunity for us to grow in our employee benefits space, and our first acquisition out of the state of Colorado. We love kind of those, I'll call it B-class cities where it's not in New York or Chicago or in LA. Our brand does well in an Austin, Texas. Our brand does well in a Phoenix, Arizona, a Denver, Colorado, where we feel that there's a lot of those middle market clients, like I said, we like to focus on. And the Carver acquisition locally that we just did strategically was to expand our footprint in Denver. Don Carver, I felt in many ways found us, CCIG, as an opportunity to take care of his people and to kind of maintain that retention of his book, because it meant so much to him for him to build that his entire life. Funny enough, we talked about family and nepotism in the insurance world. We actually employed Don's daughter as a client service executive for a while at our company. That's kind of how Don obviously knew Brooke just through the community and my dad's work with Payak. But I think that kind of got him thinking about, well, I like the fact that CCIG is local. They are independent. They're trying to take care of the local community's clients first. So that was a main focus for him in that acquisition. And also one of the reasons we strategically purchased Carver and Associates was there was the Denver core group of accounts, but also it came with a producer that was down in Phoenix, Arizona. So obviously the proximity to Phoenix, we had a lot of clients down there already just through personal lines, second homes, but also they were doing business in Colorado and in Phoenix, but we hadn't really put a flag down there yet and built out that spot. So we, with the Carver acquisition, added a producer or kept a producer down in Phoenix. And so now we have a strategy to build out that office similar to our Austin, Texas location. So it's kind of a win-win for us, bring on more business and great talent here local to Colorado through Carver, but also expand into Phoenix and there's so much growth opportunity in Phoenix. We're very bullish on that market.
Okay. All right. So, are you planning to make more acquisitions in the future? Anything on the radar?
Certainly. I mean, we're always in the process. We work with Reagan Consulting, and we're a part of all the associations. So we're constantly in this world. It's funny, when we first got into the M&A world, going back, Carver was our 19th acquisition. Brooke did a ton of these small lift outs in Colorado back when there was many more independent agents out there.
Yeah.
So smaller book rolls or strategic acquisitions were more common. Now I feel like a lot of those have been either gobbled up or just transitioned into larger agencies or just sold off their book.
Yeah.
We have felt that this process of M&A has been imperative for us, but also organic growth is the number one reason we're here and we're focused there. We invest our people and our processes and our technology on retaining our book and growing that book organically. But like I said at the beginning, you have to be open to M&A if you want to strategically grow. So we're constantly, like I said, working with Reagan, working with other kind of sources to see who's available in the market. Does it make sense for us? You'll probably end up kissing a lot of frogs through the process.
Yeah.
Like maybe we're not a right fit or they're not a right fit for us, but we're certainly open in the marketplace to continue to grow through acquisition. That's a definite need and want for us.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking with a principal who's been making a number of smaller acquisitions in New England, and I asked him, I bet like in the first 5 minutes of sitting down in a diner, having a nice Greek omelet in a diner, and like in the first 5 minutes it's going to work or not. He goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's like the culture, you can look at a spreadsheet, it all sounds good, or maybe just okay, like maybe you could clean it up and make it better. But then, if the culture isn't a match, it fails. And I'm afraid a lot of the owners, agency owners out there, have waited too long to be thinking about succession planning or
Yeah.
are selling off, and so they're, things start to dwindle. The culture starts to break apart. That's what I worry about. And that's probably why some of them, are the frauds.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can tell from a business owner, have they prepared their business for that sale? If the answer is no, then maybe it's just a price play. They just want to, hey, I've had a great career. I want to step aside, get a good number and head into retirement. And that's fine too.
Yeah.
Uh, we tend to play more we want to make sure that that owner stays involved for whatever timeline they want to lay out, but we're in the process of taking care of the people that want to stay on with CCIG. What is their what does their kind of future look like? And then how do we maintain and retain those clients, keep them happy, offer them more services, market access, carrier access to technology. How do we cross sell a lot of that business? So we're very strategic in growing that book versus just buying something and kind of letting the old regime move on.
Yeah. So how was benefits benefited you, so to speak? It is historically speaking, newer for agencies, but man, the larger brokers like yourself have really learned to rely on it to smooth out the cycles you see in P&C. There's been a hard market for a number of years, for example. It's a difficult time. A lot of people are shopping, the market, remarketing to different carriers and everything. But I'm sure benefits too has its own stresses. What has it meant for you guys? And I think I just want to clarify. You said it's about 40% of your book, or is it 40% of your staff works there? I want to make sure I got that right.
About 40%, yeah, of the book.
Okay.
Give or take. EB for us has been that necessary. We've always kind of dabbled in it, but didn't really have a core focus back when Brooks' regime was there. He identified it more as a defense mechanism. In our world, if you're not supplying the customer with P&C offerings, captive offerings, personal lines for some of the high-end, board members and employee benefits, then another broker is going to come in and potentially take that account. And the employee benefits world is growing rapidly. And we kind of felt that it was an absolute must for us to have that. So even before we strategically acquired Karen, we had some individuals that we brought over from some larger brokers that built the whole practice from scratch. And that was key for us. Like EB has been just an outstanding win for us, growing at upwards of 200%, and really helping us cross sell a lot of the current clients that we did have. So locking in those clients, offering them the employee benefits offering on top of the P&C has been huge for us. But that business is rock solid. The team that we have built came from larger, sometimes publicly traded or just larger, independent brokerages. So they came to us with the idea, hey, we're 30 million, but this is what it's going to take to get us to 100 million. And that was, very strategic in what we were wanting to add to the CCIG offering. But I can't, say too many good things about our Austin team and what they've been able to accomplish. Opening our eyes to the captive strategy has been huge. We were doing that on the P&C side, but really had no offering on the employee benefits side. And so we've partnered with Pareto nationally, and we do a lot of workshops with them for our clients, which I think has been huge. But just being able to offer a different solution for our clients has been massive, and just an overall win in terms of retaining that customer.
Yeah. So I imagine you guys are moving voluntary and involuntary benefits for your customers, right? Offering all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we love to play in that tailored plan, similar to if you're putting together a high deductible plan or something strategic on the P&C side, they also want to see that on the employee benefit side. The costs and the increases on the employee or on the EB side can be so dramatic that if you are not combing through the details of the policy and really offering multiple different avenues for terms, then I think you're losing the game, and another broker will step in and offer that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Spencer, want to get back to a couple of questions about you personally. Can you share something where I call like your biggest screw up, your biggest business mistake or misstep, but really more importantly, what you learned from the experience?
Yeah, I think when we came back into the business and strategically started to, I think you're young and hungry, and we saw what what large sales teams can do. We invested heavily in production, and there is a fine balance that we learned, and you can't add too many salespeople without also bolstering the service side as well. So we brought on all sorts of producers from books of business that we lifted out from other brokerages where they were strategic and in a niche space, all the way to this person's been in sales for 15 years and they don't know anything about insurance, but we're going to bring them over and we're going to train them up. And what we found is those are all great things. You have to have a bench of unvalidated producers that you can coach up. You have to have, the kind of senior producers that have been proven in the industry, but they're also going to go after larger accounts, which is going to require a lot of service work. You have to have all those, but you can't grow too fast in those spaces without backfilling on expert service individuals. So we kind of grew a little bit too fast and then had to backtrack with filling out our service teams from marketing managers and client executives, all the way down to just people that are going to produce a COI for somebody in 24 hours. So Andrew and I kind of felt that sales leads the way, and that is true, but you have to also be able to maintain that book of business, take care of those leads, and grow that book smartly versus quickly. So that was probably our biggest I don't want to call it a failure, but
teaching moment.
Yeah, we had some bruises for sure for a few
Bruises.
years on maybe growing too fast without properly building out a service team.
It's an interesting business because if you sell somebody a pencil, or you go to a restaurant, you sell them some food or whatever, like you pretty much make money in every sale, or should. But insurance, nobody really makes money, not the carrier, not the agent, when you net everything out until like the third year. So without the service, it's like a fool's errand. You're adding and then you're losing. So as a matter of fact, I bet a lot of new sales come from, most people already have insurance unless they're a startup. So it's coming from another supplier who probably screwed up, didn't communicate well, whatever it was. And so you don't want to be the same firm, that you're winning the business from. It's interesting.
Yeah, you'd much rather have 100 kind of smaller middle market deals that stick with you for 20 years than the multi-million-dollar deal that sticks around for a few years and leaves.
Yeah.
Because you weren't able to offer the right services. So
right.
It's about being able to drop down into what their wants and needs are, maintaining that kind of standard of service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of times I think, and I'm a salesperson myself, like you can kind of sometimes overpromise and underdeliver. And if you're underdelivering, it's not usually about the price. It's just the fact that the service wasn't met to that standard that you were, saying that you were going to do. So that's, I think, the most important part to what we do. We always say in our world, what can make you different from buying from one of these larger strategic publicly traded PE backed? It's we are in the process of caring about what your wants and needs are. We say we're the curious broker, which I love the idea of. Let's challenge the status quo. Let's just because you've been buying from that carrier or that type of insurance for the last 10 years doesn't mean that it's the right. Like let's uncover every option and provide multiple avenues for our clients. I think that's the most important thing, is to constantly, as a broker, be advising, not just, here's your renewal, it went up a little bit, it went down a little bit, on to the next. It's what's the strategy of the next couple of years and how do we pivot?
Yeah. Well, that is so important for clients, and it's not just rinsing and repeating on the renewals. A lot of agents run into the trap of whatever coverage the customer has, and they're trying to win the business. They'll rinse and repeat something another agent wrote, and it's the wrong stuff. And it takes work, but I like the idea of the curiosity and challenging the status quo. Like, what does the client have? What do they need? What's missing? Because in my experience in working with just on the research side, I don't sell insurance, but in talking with policyholders, a lot of times they're like, yeah, I want to know what I don't have. I want to know what risks are out there. I may not buy it, but I want to know, so that takes work. Rinsing and repeating is an E&O claim waiting to happen.
Yeah, totally.
But you already knew all that.
That's where senior producers and also junior producers can really provide value. It's not just taking and rinse and repeating that same policy, that same piece of advice year after year. Like, these companies are going through everything that we're going through. The economy, you mentioned it all at the beginning of the podcast, the economy, the tariffs, they want to know what's on the horizon. That's why they pay you as a broker. I mean, so for us to be able to say, this is what you are buying today, but here are 4 other options that you will potentially need to purchase in the future, strategically, and here's how you would get there and pay for those options, and employees that you want to have covered, and different risks that we want to make sure we're getting ahead of. Like, one of our largest investments was we built out our risk management team after talking with other larger independent brokers, specifically in that real estate space. Having the ability for a risk management team to say, okay, you own a bunch of properties in these states. This is the profile of the portfolio you want to go after. How do we strategically go out to those buildings or offer services so that you're able to make decisions on buying something before you even have to purchase it? From an insurance perspective, like, are these good options to add to your portfolio or not? And that really made us stand out, I think, in the business world. Instead of like, we'll quote it once you have it under your umbrella. It's like, no, what can we do now to kind of predict what I think would be a good option for your strategic growth, versus waiting around and seeing what the price is going to be. I think sometimes that can come back and bite you.
Yeah. Spencer, did you or do you have a mentor in your life, or somebody who made a difference in your career path? You mentioned your dad saying, go off and, get your teeth kicked in. That's mentoring, man. That's good.
Yeah.
But no, and if it's Brooke, great. But, I want to ask the question.
Yeah. I mean, I think the easy one would be Brooke. I mean, he not only just as a father, but, it's funny. I think growing up, you're always like, oh, well, my parents, they don't know anything. And then you get into the business world and you're like, okay, actually, they know maybe way more than we expected. Brooke has been kind of a guiding light for us in terms, and I will say he's also kind of let us fail. I mentioned the service aspect and over building our sales team. Sometimes he could see that, but was like, well, these guys need to learn that lesson so that they can, make those adjustments on their own, just like he did. He's been a guiding light for us just in this, recent growth. We were able to take the company over when it was about 15 million in revenue, and now we've since doubled it. So we're doing something right, which is great. I think he's proud of that. I help kind of put on our sales trip every single year, and we've recently, last couple of years, rolled out an award called the Brooke Mahoney Award. Really, it's not necessarily going to the most revenue or the number one producer. It goes to the partner, the producer at CCIG that presents the best, shows up in the community, raises their hand to mentor. Like, if they're in a meeting, they're the first person to kind of ask a question. So just somebody that all around encompasses our values. And we felt like the need to reward somebody like that would be, what a better way than to get an award that's named after our founder. So long story, yeah, I think Brooke has been a phenomenal mentor to us in,
That's cool.
the business world.
Yeah, it's a good way. The award's a good way too to highlight the culture you're trying to maintain, serving others, doing the right thing, all the things that are in your core values, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Is there a last question, Spencer, anything along the way, a piece of advice that's sort of been a mantra for you, guided your career as you think about challenges and new adventures and things?
Yeah, I think we touched on it earlier. I love the idea of always remain curious. That's kind of been one of our mantras at CCIG, and something that I think drives the wedge sometimes with getting people to think outside of the box. What's the foundation of a successful business? Sometimes is just asking, why are we doing it this way and how can we do it better? So one of our core values is just being a good listener. And I feel like being a good listener is also kind of, like I said, challenging that status quo. So always remain curious, I think, is something that is embodiment at CCIG, and a lot of our outstanding sales professionals and service professionals, they lead with that. How do they challenge the status quo?
Spencer, great stuff. Thank you. Thanks for taking some time to be with us, and I wish you all the best in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir.
This has been On Point with Peter Van Artryk, a podcast presentation of Wells Media Group.